Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. My name is Joanna Nelson, and I am the Strategic Programs Manager for the Economic Development Department for the state of New Mexico. And you have tuned in today to one of our webinars that we host ongoing as a part of a webinar series where we try to highlight relevant information and opportunities for businesses and communities. So today we're really excited. We've got some special guests that are going to walk us through how to do business with the state of New Mexico. And we're going to hear from the state purchasing office, and they'll be helping us get some insight into how they work, as well as some exciting updates. So really happy that you could join us, and we're really thankful for our panelists today. I did want to share a little bit of logistics for you before we get started. If you tune into our webinars, I'm sure this is old news, but want to go ahead and share this for the folks that might be joining us for the first time today. This webinar is being recorded, so we will post this on our YouTube channel that you can find if you just go to YouTube, search New Mexico Economic Development Department. And I hope to post that hopefully by the end of tomorrow. So that'll be up soon. And then we'll also send out a link to the recording as well. And we will send out the presentation slides. So if you have to jump off, no problem. If you have questions, feel free to go ahead and put your questions as they come to you in the questions box. And you can see that gray horizontal box on the right side of your screen. So this is your chance to ask any questions and get the information that you need. So again, we're really happy that you're here with us, and we hope that this session is informative and of value to you. So I wanted to take a few seconds to provide you with some information about our department before we get started. As you can see, we have numerous divisions with the Economic Development Department. Our Cabinet Secretary is Alicia Keys. Our Deputy Cabinet Secretary is John Clark. I want to make sure that folks on the call know about a special program that we have called the Collateral Assistance Program. This is our ability to help businesses that have a shortfall in collateral. We can, and this of course is if a business is trying to get a commercial loan, our department is able to provide CDs, certificate of deposits, to make up collateral shortfalls in a commercial loan. And we do have special preference placed on demographic information, like are the business owners located in rural areas or members of socially disadvantaged groups, and that includes women, U.S. veterans, and ethnic minorities. And then we also place a special focus on the governor's 9 targeted industries that you can see listed here on the screen. And we can support projects up to $250,000 or up to 50% of the principal. This is a relatively new program, and so the reason why I'm sharing it with you today is just to make sure that awareness is out there. If you are getting a commercial loan, especially if you're going to be expanding and contracting with the state or even the federal government, this could be a really good tool to use. So any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. I want to make sure that everyone is aware of that program. As well, we have numerous other financial programs within our state office. So I'm not going to go into all of these, but the good thing is a lot of the information about these programs is on our YouTube page or our website. So feel free to explore those and ask any questions if they come up. Additionally, want to make sure that folks located all over the state know that our department has regional representatives for our department, and you can find your EDD regional rep by going to this link and they are a fantastic resource, extremely helpful. They are perfect connectors if you have questions about a huge variety of topics. They're going to be a great point of contact to put you in the right direction and help you navigate questions, whether it's around business, nonprofit, or even community, local government issues. So here's the information about who you would go to in your respective region. And then finally, I want to sum up our little blurb about our department and make sure that you all know how to stay up to date and stay tuned to our EDD. So what you can do is make sure you're signed up for our news and updates, and we put those out every Monday. We were putting them out on Friday and recently switched to Monday. And in those newsletters, we're pretty much surveying not only the state, but national opportunities, business programs, community development, nonprofit. We are looking high and low for any and all opportunities to compile and put into this newsletter. So we're also putting webinar information, we're putting news. If you're not getting these, this is a great chance to sign up. And then here you can see our website, goinm.biz, and then here's the link to our YouTube channel. So enough about EDD. Hopefully this is old news to you. You already know this information. Let's go ahead and kick off this webinar session. And I'm going to switch over to our first panelist. One second, bear with me. And I want to introduce Gabriela Marques, who is the Center Director for the Minority Business Development Center. And Gabriela, take it away. We're so excited that you could join us today to give us some information about what you're doing.
Thank you, Joanna, and thank you everyone for being here today. I'm just going to take a few minutes before Susan goes on with the great information about how to do business with the state of New Mexico. And we wanted to take a minute to introduce the Minority Business Development Agency Business Center that just reopened to the states December last year. So we are new in the middle of the pandemic, and I wanted to make sure that we all had a chance to learn a little bit about it. So this center is funded by the U.S. Department of Commerce, and its goal is to create and retain jobs, U.S. jobs, by promoting growth. So this is a network of business centers that are across the country, and New Mexico is so lucky to have one. And what we do is we support minority-owned businesses, so the business has to have 51% or more of minority-owned ownership, and we help these businesses with technical assistance, access to capital, contract opportunities, accessing new markets. We have lots of events and opportunities and different workshops. The reason that these minority business development agencies exist across the country is this recognition that in the United States, there are 11 million minority-owned firms, and how to create a really focus to elevate those businesses. And so you can see there, it talks a little bit about the vision, is it economic prosperity for all American business enterprises? And that mission is to promote growth of minority-owned businesses in the state of New Mexico, and now, of course, throughout the country as well. So here has a little bit of focus of like, who is the businesses that we are looking to work with? Minority-owned, and it has a little definition of what that means. Unfortunately, women-owned does not qualify, but if you are Hispanic, that would qualify to work with us, or Native American, Pacific Islander, African American, Asian American, everything that's listed on the slide. Below, there is a few of the focus industries that we work with, but it's not exclusive. So we can also work with other industries. And we do have a requirement that businesses are mid-size, which is considered $500,000 in revenue and above. But we'll be happy to talk to anyone on the phone or via email or if we ever meet in person again and give more information about all our events. This is a little bit about the case throughout the country of why the minority business development agencies exist. So there's 11 million minority-owned businesses in the United States, employing more than 6 million people and generating almost 2 trillion in revenue annually. So this is a little bit of our work, supporting businesses with access to capital, access to contracts, access to markets. And then the fourth column that's not included there is really capacity development. So working really closely with businesses to think about like, what are your goals for this year, the following year, and how are we helping you get there? If it's, you know, with mentorship, connecting to different resources, you know, grant opportunities, whatever it might be. So here's more details around that. For our agency or business center here in New Mexico, we have strategic partners that are listed, Arrowhead and MSU at the state of NMSU State University, the Hispano Chamber of Commerce, West Enterprises Center, and the city of Albuquerque. But we are not focused just in the city of Albuquerque. I just want to make that sure, make sure that's clear, because sometimes it can be confusing. We are serving all U.S. businesses, so we are focusing on businesses in New Mexico, but we can actually operate, even support businesses in Arizona or Utah, wherever it might be. And this is our contact information. So I would love to talk to you and see how we can support. We do not have any fees. We just want to really support minority-owned businesses grow. Feel free to give us a call or email, and our website, where there's also an inquiry page, and there's also a list of events that we have, including tomorrow. We have a procurement series from 9 a.m. until 3 p.m. and you can go on our website and there's information there how to register, and there's going to be buyers across city, county, inquiry institutions, state level, and a lot of really great workshops and panels. So tomorrow, procurement series, and we have plenty of other events like one in early April, that's how to do business with the federal, how to get your first federal contract. So thank you so much for your time, and I hope to hear from all of you soon from the Minority Business Development Agency.
Thank you so much, Gabriela. That was great. And while I'm switching presenters to our next panelist, feel free, if you have any questions for Gabriela, to type those in the questions box. And if you have any information you want to put in the chat about a link maybe to the series, Gabriela, feel free to do that. And thank you all for being such great partners, because you are a piece of this, you know, the whole puzzle of contracting. So your assistance and guidance is really an important part. Okay, I am going to bring you on, Susan.
Okay.
And I would like to introduce to everyone Susan Inman, who is the Training Development Specialist for the State Purchasing Division. And we are so excited to have you. We know you do a lot of these presentations, but I think this is the first one with our department. So
it is.
Really thrilled to be forging a good relationship with you all. And one comment before you get going, Susan, Della said, thanks for all you do, Gabriela. Looking forward to partnering with you and your team. So we had a comment of support. No questions.
I love it. Thank you.
That's great.
All right. Okay, take it away, Susan. Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Joanna. As Joanna said, my name is Susan Inman. I am the Training Development Specialist with State Purchasing Division of the General Services Department. And not only am I the Training Development Specialist, but I am also a buyer. So I do the procurements that we're going to be talking about. And so one of the things I'm going to do, and I can't, okay, so I am going to turn off my camera because it's blocking my view of my presentation. So I'm going to turn off the camera so I can do the presentation and see what it says. So these are the things that we're going to be talking about today, all right? I'm just going to tell you a little bit about who state purchasing is and what we do. I'm going to show you the state purchasing website. I'm going to talk to you about our electronic procurement system called ePro&M and why you as a vendor, a supplier, should register. I'm going to talk to you about the two main types of competitive solicitations that we do. We're going to talk about New Mexico resident preferences, if you're not already familiar with them. And then I'm going to make some recommendations to you as far as some of the things that we see or repeated issues that we tend to have that tend to trip people up. So hopefully we can help you avoid some of those. So state purchasing, we are a division within the General Services Department. Okay, so each state agency has different divisions, and we are state purchasing. Although really we focus on procurement, really rather than purchasing. State purchasing, what we do is we do procurements over $60,000 for executive branch agency. Okay, that's one of the things that we do. It's general services procurements, meaning general services as opposed to professional services. We do procurements for amounts that are over $60,000. And again, for executive branch agencies. So give everybody a little social studies refresher. Everybody remember, I don't know if you're old enough to remember Schoolhouse Rock, but the three branches of the government: judicial, legislative, and executive. So we do contracts that meet these requirements for executive branch agencies. We also perform procurements to establish statewide price agreements. Okay, so these are contracts that we call them price agreements because they contain pricing, kind of like if you think of a menu, that is open for all state agencies and local public bodies to use. There are even some tribal entities that use our statewide price agreements. And so we do the procurements, we put the statewide price agreements in place, and what that means for state agencies and local public bodies is that the majority of the statewide price agreements that we have, all it requires from the state agency or local public body is that they do a PO for whatever goods or services they're requesting. Okay, they don't have to do the procurement themselves. We've already done the procurement. We've put a price agreement in place, and that is open for state agencies and local public bodies to use. There are a handful of statewide price agreements that require a state agency or local public body to have an actual contract with the vendor that they choose. But that is, like I said, that's the minority of the agreements that we have. And so one of the reasons why this is such a big deal is because many state agencies and local public bodies require that their people look to the statewide price agreements before they look anywhere else, right? Again, because so they don't have to do the procurement. All they have to do is look to see if we have a statewide price agreement in place. They can use that contract for reference and either do a PO or establish a contract. Okay, we're not going to get into all the statutory reasons for that, but that's why it's important. And so this is a state purchasing website. I'm not going to do a demo of the state purchasing website, but if you look, there are a number of things. There's a number of menus right here, right? You can look at active bids and proposals, and we've got a whole list of things here. And it's a public site, so everything that we have there is, you can go on and look and explore to your heart's content. And so how do we get to the state purchasing website? Well, you just do a search. You could do a search for GSD SPD, right? I've done it in Google, Yahoo, Bing, and DuckDuckGo, and it's usually the first link that comes up. So pretty easy to find. And then, as I said, you can find active bids and proposals there, meaning you can take a look at the active procurements we have on our webpage. All right, you don't need to sign up for anything. You don't need to do anything different. Just go to our website, look at the active bids and proposals, and then in the drop-down, you're going to click on active procurements. You can look at our statewide price agreements. These are on our webpage for anybody to look at. So you can go and do a search on that. You can look at our statewide price agreements, do a search and see what kind of contracts we have out there, what kind of agreements we have posted on our webpage. If it's anything that that you might be interested in, we do these procurements on a periodic basis, right? You can look to see when the current contract is expiring. We also have a list of the New Mexico resident preferences on our website. So if you want to see who has a preference according to the New Mexico Taxation and Revenue Department, then you can look on our website. It's pulled from their database on a weekly basis. So you can take a look and see all the businesses that are on there, or search for a specific business. Occasionally, rarely, we will debar or suspend a vendor, okay, for being naughty. There's nobody on there right now, and thankfully this doesn't happen very often because we don't want it to. But if anybody is debarred or suspended, it's going to be on this page. And then the one that I want to make sure that you look at is look at resources and information, and when the drop down comes down, you're going to want to click on vendors. Okay, and that's right here. So resources and information, and then click on vendors. And it's going to bring you to a section on that web page. It's a big long page with all sorts of other information. And again, you're more than welcome to look through the web page to see everything that we have available, the resources we have available. But specifically for vendors, we have these things. Now, I've added the little bullets under each link, but first off is the NIGP commodity codes. I think some of you who deal with federal you're familiar with the NAICS codes. These are the codes that we use. And a commodity code is just a numerical representation of a category of goods or services. So like when you go to the grocery store, you see the barcode, and under that barcode, there's a number, right? We don't have a number for every single item or every single service, but we do have a number for categories of goods or services. And so, one of the things that is when we get to talking about getting registered with state purchasing, the first thing you're going to want to do is download these codes. And it's a spreadsheet. I just want everybody to know it's an Excel spreadsheet, and downloading it is fine. I would not recommend printing it out because there's almost 10,000 codes. So a lot easier to search it using the Control F function than it is to print them out and go through 10,000 codes manually and maybe with a highlighter. So select the codes that you want that apply to your business, right? That you want to use. The ones, all the commodity codes that are applicable to your business, and I would just jot them down. That way you have them right there. We also have, so if you want to register, we have the link directly to the registration page. We also have a link to a registration guide. It is a step-by-step PDF of how to register. It is a little out of date, and we are updating that right now, but I think it gives you a good enough idea. And then there are phone numbers available. So if you run into any problems, you can call the phone numbers, and I actually have them in this presentation for you as well. We have a link so technically the vendor preference application link is not a link to the preferences or to the, it's information. It provides you with information, a little information about the New Mexico resident preferences. But really, there's a link that takes you to the New Mexico Taxation and Revenue Department. We call them Tax and Rev. To Tax and Rev, the Tax and Rev website, where you can scroll to the bottom and get the application from there. Take a look at the information that's required. So it's more of a leading you to the place where you need to go. The New Mexico substitute W-9s. if you submit a bid or a proposal, and if we go to make an award and you do not have a record in the state's share system, right, that's our accounting and financial system, then we are going to request that you fill out a New Mexico substitute W-9. And we've gotten questions before about, can you use a different W-9? No, I'm sorry, you have to use the one that we provide, the one that's on DFA's, the Department of Finance Administration. We have to use the one that DFA designates. So, but we will send that to you when we've made an award. And then there are certain types of awards, certain types of contracts, agreements that require vendors to submit a quarterly gross receipts sales report. And this is an Excel spreadsheet that is the format in which we need the report submitted. So again, information available to you. You can download, take a look at it because it's public information. So I want to talk to you about registering with state purchasing. So what does that mean? So when we register, when a vendor registers with state purchasing, first of all, it's free, right? There's no fees. You register in our system, and what the system does is it allows for notification. You're going to use those commodity codes that I just spoke to you about, but it's going to provide you with notification of the procurements that state purchasing puts out. So when we issue an ITB, which is an invitation to bid, or an RFP, which is a request for proposals, when we issue a procurement, we use those commodity codes, and the system will send automatic notification to vendors who have registered for the commodity codes that we've chosen. So if you're not sure whether you want to register or not, just understand that you're not required to register to take a look at the procurements that we have on our webpage, okay? As I said before, you can go to the website, you can look at the active ITBs and RFPs, look at the active procurements to see what we have available, and you are not required to register, okay? You don't have to. However, if you find an ITB or an RFP that you want to submit a response to, you do have to register, okay? Because of COVID-19, state purchasing has changed so that we only allow electronic submission, okay, of bids and proposals. We don't accept hard copy bids or proposals anymore. And in order to submit a bid or a proposal, you must be registered in our ePro&M system, okay? And you also have to register using those commodity codes if you want to be automatically notified when we issue a solicitation that falls within your business parameters according to those commodity codes that you've chosen. And then, like I said, make sure you're selecting as many commodity codes as are applicable to your business, okay? And I usually encourage vendors to be kind of liberal in choosing them. You know what I mean? Think outside the box. So if you provide a specific service for like school management, why not also just look at general management, right? Register for that one to see whether anything comes up, because you are able to adjust those commodity codes, right? You're going to get an email. If it's applicable to you, you can click on the links provided to take a look at the procurement. And if it's not, you can just simply delete the email, right? Real simple. And then if you're repeatedly getting notified of things that aren't applicable under a commodity code, you can always go into your profile in our ePro&M system and adjust that, right? You can make it work for you, for your business. Now, there are a couple of things I also want you to understand is that just because you are registered in our ePro&M system, it does not guarantee you an award, right? When we do competitive solicitations, we do not give preference to people who are to those who are registered, right? You don't now everybody has to register, but you don't get preference, any kind of preference for how long you've been registered, none of that. You also, when you register, you are not automatically put on a statewide price agreement. I know that there's some misinformation going around out there about that, but just because you register does not mean you're going to get an award, nor does it mean that you are going to automatically be put on a statewide price agreement. Okay, because again, the majority of our statewide price agreements are done at a competitive level, and you have to submit either a bid or a proposal along with all the other responding vendors. Okay, and so if you are registered in our system, I got 2 phone numbers for you. All right, so if you have an existing profile, right? If you have one, and then maybe someone else at your business, you had an office manager who's now gone, maybe they completed the registration and you need to change contact information or your password, you're going to need to contact the 800 number. Okay, that is to the developer. We do not have access to that. So again, if you need to update or change the contact information or a password, we can't do that for you. However, if you need help setting up your profile or managing your profile, or if you need assistance because you're trying to upload a bid or a proposal, you can call our local number. Okay, this is to our in-house help desk, and they will assist you. They can see a lot more than just the average buyers can see, and they can assist you with any questions you might have about your profile or about uploading your response to procurements. And so I really want to talk to you now about competitive solicitations. All right, the 2 main types of competitive solicitations that we have are ITBs, invitations to bid, and RFPs, request for proposals. Okay, for an ITB, vendors are called bidders and they submit bids. All right, and an ITB, if you're not familiar, is we award to the lowest price. Okay, you have to meet all of our specifications, and there is no negotiating with ITBs. All right, and sometimes, so one of the things I don't want to get bogged down here too much with technical details, but I know that sometimes it's hard for vendors to understand why things are the way they are, and we actually aren't allowed to negotiate with ITBs because by law. Okay, we have statutes that say that there is no modification to bids after bid opening, and that means no negotiation because we can't modify any terms and conditions. And so we can't negotiate on ITBs. You either have to accept the terms and conditions and the specifications as we put in the document and accept those and provide us with prices and anything else we ask for, or you don't, right? And that's okay too, right? That's okay if you don't want to. So we need you with ITBs to give us your lowest price because that is how we award, right? If we're doing an ITB for an agency, maybe we only award to one vendor. If we're doing an ITB to put in place a statewide price agreement, we may make a multiple award, right? We're going to award to more than one vendor. So give us your lowest price. The other thing I want you to be aware of is that in an ITB, we may require you to submit certain documentation or a certain form or certain information. please be sure that you are submitting that to us. Okay, for example, when we do construction ITBs, we require that the bidders submit a copy of their current New Mexico contractor's license along with their bid. Okay, you have to submit a copy of your current New Mexico contractor's license with your bid. So if we've put in the ITB that you are required to do that, then you have to submit that document. You can't, if you either don't submit it or you submit it and it is expired, then we're not even going to look at your prices. All right. Make sure that you are submitting everything that we've required in the document. If there's any. Sometimes there's not. We just want you to submit the prices. Okay. And as I said, there is no negotiation with ITBs. Right? There's no proposing alternate terms and conditions. It's either accepted in its entirety or it's not. Okay. And technically speaking, there is one very specific instance in which we can negotiate, but that has to do with our budget, not with the bids. Okay. It has to do with our budget, and it's very, very specific and very, very limited. Okay. So we don't really have an option to negotiate with ITBs, and we don't accept alternate terms and conditions. So RFPs, requests for proposals, are a little different. Okay, vendors are called offerers or proposers in construction RFPs, and they submit proposals. Right, you submit proposals. RFPs are qualification-based procurements. They are based on points, not just dollar amounts. Okay, cost is a portion, but it's only a small portion of an RFP. We are looking for someone who is qualified to do the work that we've identified in the scope of work in the RFP, but we are also balancing that out with cost if cost is applicable. Okay, because I have done a number of RFPs where cost has not been a factor, and the reason why is because the costs that we were dealing with are identified either in the regulations or in statute, right? So there was no cost for the vendors to submit, but cost is only a portion. We have scored requirements, right? We evaluate based on the criteria that we put in an RFP, and we have pass-fail requirements. You either, again, we can ask you for a license or a certification, and you either submit it and you pass, or you don't and you fail. And many times, if you fail, that means that we put your proposal aside and we don't even look at the rest of it. Right? If you want to think of RFPs like an interview on paper, right? We ask a lot of questions, you know, give us your relevant, the extent of your relevant experience with state and local governments or federal government, private industry. Tell us about your staff, provide resumes, give us a project plan or a business plan on what you think this project looks like. Because we want you to tell us about yourself. We want to see how much you know. And so I really do think of these as kind of like an interview on paper. We're asking you to respond and convince us that you are the most qualified to provide the goods and or services and or construction that we're requesting, right? So RFPs require you to put some thought into your response. It's not just cost. Okay. So we want you to convince us that you are the most qualified. So two very different competitive methods. ITBs, the focus is low cost. RFPs, the focus is balanced between an organization that's qualified, vendors who are qualified, and cost. Again, cost is only a portion of an RFP if there's any. Okay. So we have competitive solicitations, and in our competitive solicitations, we use the New Mexico resident preferences. Okay, this is a legal term. These preferences are established by law, okay, in the Chapter 13 Public Purchases and Property, Article 1 Procurement. Right, this is where these laws are located, and we usually refer to them as like the first one, 13-1-21. This is the application of the preference, how we as state agencies or local public bodies are to apply the preferences. And we are going to talk about that on the next slide so you understand, because sometimes there can be confusion about application of preferences. But 13-1-22, this is the one that sets the minimum requirements for certification, for getting those certificates, those preference certificates. Okay, so two statutes that are applicable to the New Mexico resident preferences. Okay, so these preferences do not establish, okay, and nor does state purchasing have a preferred vendor list. We get questions on that all the time, and there is no such thing. Okay, you can be registered in our system, which automatically notifies you of procurement, and you can obtain a New Mexico resident preference through the New Mexico Taxation and Revenue Department, but we do not have a preferred vendor list. So if you call us up and say, I'd like to know how to get on your preferred vendor list, we're going to tell you that that doesn't exist. We do not have a preferred vendor list. Okay. So the New Mexico preferences. So the New Mexico preferences, again, are established. You get the certificates through the New Mexico Taxation and Revenue Department. Okay, we use the preferences for award purposes, and you must submit a copy of the certificate along with your bid or your proposal. Okay, you must submit a copy. You can't just say, you know, go look at the list, we're on the list, it's on your website. You have to submit a copy, right? We need a copy of that to put in our procurement file. And so we have two different percentage amounts, okay? We have a New Mexico resident business or a resident contractor preference worth 5%. And we have a New Mexico resident veteran business or veteran contractor preference worth 10%. Okay, some of you out there, I hope, already have these. So what does that mean? So if we look at the statute for how we as a government organization is to apply your preference to our solicitation, 13-1-21 B and C tell us we use your preference to lower bids. Okay, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more on the next slide. We use it to lower your bid. Again, we use it for award purposes. This is not a discount that the statute says that we get. Okay. And if we're talking about RFPs, 13-1-21 D and E say that we apply that 5 or 10% to the total amount of points in an RFP. And again, we'll talk about that a little bit more on the next slide. Now, there used to be, I don't think it happens anymore, but maybe. Used to be that people would get both, they would have both. They would have a New Mexico resident business preference and a New Mexico resident veteran business preference. 13-1-21H tells us we cannot apply both. So you can't submit both and get 15%. Okay, we can't apply both. You only get to apply one or the other, right? So only submit one or another. And if for some reason you have both and submit them, I always tell agencies to ask you, as the vendor, ask you which one you want applied. Okay, because I don't want them making a decision for you. You need to tell them which one's applicable, but we cannot apply both. And this next one is something that kind of comes up that I've found may clear up a few things for any of you who have been in this situation. So 13-1-21J tells us that if we are spending federal money, for the solicitation, so let's say we have an RFP out there, and then when we put a contract in place, we're going to be using federal money to pay for it, then we are not to use or apply the New Mexico preferences to that procurement. Okay, I hope everybody understands that. Let me say that a different way. If the expenditure for the solicitation that we are doing involves us spending federal money, federal funds, we're getting a federal grant of some kind, we are prohibited from using the New Mexico preferences, from applying the New Mexico preferences to that ITB or RFP as a matter of law. Okay, now why is this important? Because I have done outreach before to where I've gotten that question, say, well, we did, I responded to a bid and they didn't apply my preference. If you are ever in a situation like that, I want you to ask whatever organization, ask the procurement person, why are you not applying preferences? And then I hope more often than not, they're going to come back and say, well, the expenditure is going to be federal funds, so we are directed by the procurement statutes to not apply the New Mexico preferences. Okay, but if you're not sure, ask. Okay, ask the question. Because for all other ITBs and RFPs, we need to be applying the preferences. It's only when we are spending federal money that we do not apply the preferences. Okay, because the New Mexico preferences do not adhere to those federal programs, right? They don't adhere to federal programs, so we don't apply them to solicitations involving federal money, because we don't want the agency or local public body, we don't want them losing their funding because they didn't comply with federal requirements. Okay, because federal funding, if you're not familiar, federal funding can be very particular, and we don't want to put an agency's funding in jeopardy if they use the New Mexico preferences, and they're not allowed to do so. So we cannot apply the New Mexico preferences to solicitations where we are going to be spending federal money to obtain them. Okay. And so when we talk about applying the preferences, okay, so if you submit, if we're talking about an ITB, and you as a bidder submit your preference, we're going to reduce your bid. Okay, we're going to adjust your bid prices and reduce them by 5 or 10%. Okay, so we're going to multiply your bid, the amounts that you bid by either 0.9 or 0.95. After we apply your preference, if you become the low bidder, okay, all things being equal, then you should win the award. But as I said before, the preference is only for award purposes, so you would win the award at the prices you submit, not at those adjusted prices. Okay, again, the preferences are used only for award purposes, only to make the award. So in all actuality, a state agency or a local public body could be paying 5 or 10% more than the lowest bid because we've applied the preferences, right? So we reduce your bid by either the 5 or 10% if you submit a copy of your certificate and if our expenditure is not involving federal funds. Okay. Now for RFPs, it's a little bit different because remember, I said that RFPs we issue are point-based, right? There are points involved for RFPs. So as I said, the statute tells us that we apply those preferences, the 5 and 10%, to the total amount of points available in the RFP. So the example here I have, so if we have an RFP that is worth 1,000 points, okay? If we have an RFP that's worth 1,000 points, just by submitting your preference, a copy of your preference certificate, you could gain an extra 50 or 100 points. And again, I can't say this enough, if it's allowed, right? Our solicitations should say whether or not, especially not when the preferences are not applicable because we are going to be spending federal money. And again, if you don't see anything in there that says that, ask. Okay, ask. So I have some recommendations for you. Okay, and these come about from a lot of the phone calls that we get, a lot of the experiences that we've had at state purchasing with solicitations, ITBs or RFPs. And so I really want you to understand some of the things that happen and hopefully avoid them. Okay, hopefully you can avoid them. So the first one is, if you are eligible for a New Mexico resident preference, look into getting one. Right now there's if I'm not mistaken, the fee is $35 and it's good for 3 years, and the form itself actually requires you to have a CPA provide an affidavit on your on some of your information, but it could potentially, help you win an award. Okay, knowing what you know, knowing how we apply it. And so the next one is, I can't stress to you enough. I mean, truly, I cannot stress to you enough the importance of reading the entire solicitation. I know we have a lot of terms and conditions. I know it's a lot of legal language. I know there's a lot of details in our procurements, but it's really important for you to understand what you're getting into, right? To know all of our terms and conditions, to thoroughly understand the scope of work and what's going to be required of you. Not only that, but making sure that you understand everything that we're requiring you to submit with that solicitation. Okay. Along with that is if you're old hat at this, okay, if you do solicitations with the state all the time, that's great, right? We're happy that you do that. But my advice to you is don't automatically assume that, you know, solicitations that we do on a regular basis, say every 4 years or whatever, that they don't change. Because as I said earlier, even though I'm the training and development specialist, I'm also a buyer and I do these solicitations. And one of the things that I ask agencies when they submit a solicitation that they do on a periodic basis is I ask them, is this based on a previous ITB or RFP? And if the answer is yes, I always recommend that they go over that scope of work, that solicitation, thoroughly to ensure that their scope of work still meets their requirements. Okay, so please treat every solicitation as if it were brand new. Don't automatically assume that you know what's in it. If it is similar, great, you're no worse off. But if things have changed and you don't notice that, then that could hurt your chances for award. Okay, and we don't want that. So don't assume, right? Don't assume you know the solicitation. Read it, read it from cover to cover and make sure that you understand it. All right. And don't just slap on a new number and submit an old bidder proposal. Okay, now some of you may be thinking, I don't do that. Why would you even do that? It happens. Okay, and that's why I'm just saying out loud, don't do that. Because again, if the solicitation has changed, if we've changed our requirements or we've asked for something in addition to things that we've asked for in the past, and you don't read it and you just submit your old, redo the numbers and redo the dates and submit your old proposal, it may not meet our requirements. And again, we don't want that to happen. Okay, we don't want that to happen. So don't submit an old bidder proposal. Make sure that you are going through and being thorough and reading it, okay? And that you are responding to the requirements that we have put as they are written, okay? As they're written. I have make a checklist, but make a checklist if it helps you to make sure that you have everything in your response that needs to be there. Because I can't tell you how many times we have had to find vendors non-responsive, meaning they get disqualified because they forgot something. Sometimes it's usually more than one something. And again, we don't want that to happen. So make sure that you are responding to the requirements as they are written. If they are not clear to you, ask questions. Again, let's go back to don't assume, right? And if we tell you, do not alter this form, then don't alter the form, okay? We go through the, believe it or not, all right? Believe it or not, the agencies go through a lot of thought in coming up with their solicitations, and the forms we create may not be all that pretty sometimes, but it's one of the things that I always encourage agencies to do is what kind of information, I ask them what kind of information is important to them and tell them to, to create a form, whether that's cost or some other form, create the form that is meaningful to them. So it may not, it may not look all that pretty, maybe kind of basic, but it is giving the agency the information that they need in order to, for an RFP, evaluate proposals, or for an ITB, compare costs. So please give us what we ask for, how we ask for it. And don't forget any of those mandatories. Anything that says you must, right? I hope all of you know the difference between must and shall. Means you have to do it. Will, you must do it. Right? Please don't forget any of those mandatories, because, especially in an RFP, or no, even in an ITB, if, we say that you must submit your current New Mexico contractor's license, then you must do that. Again, if you forget and don't submit it, or you submit one that's expired and tell us, oh, well, we're working on, getting it updated, we are going to put your bid aside. We're going to put your response aside, and we're not going to look at it further. Okay. And that is because if we've said that that's what we're going to do, if we said that you must submit it and you don't, then we can't look at it, right? We can't, because we have to adhere to the document that we put out, just as you do. And this is another thing that's really, really important. All this stuff is important, right? You're going to just said important a lot, but these are things that we see on a repeated basis. If you don't understand something in the solicitation, ask. Don't guess, ask. Okay, so I'm going to give you some examples. So I did an RFP with an agency once, and in our RFPs, we are statutorily required, by law, we are required to put a camping contribution disclosure form in our RFPs and have them in the proposals, right? We are required to put them in there. We had a vendor, and for the camping contribution disclosure forms in an RFP, if you're not familiar with them, they require you to either disclose the amount of money that you submitted to the identified elected official, or say none. Okay, you have to sign it and date it, right? That's your official statement. We had a vendor who, what they did is they put a statement and said, we are a multi-international company. Of course, I'm paraphrasing here. We are a multi-international company. We can't, this is not something that we can get from every single vice president or above, but we'll be happy to talk to you about it. And then they didn't sign it. They didn't ask a question. So for us, a campaign contribution disclosure form in an RFP is mandatory. And because they did not complete it and sign it, they were disqualified. We found them non-responsive and they were disqualified. Okay, but had they asked the question, right? Because in RFPs, we have a question and answer period. If they had asked the question, do we need to get all of our vice presidents and above all across the globe? Do we need to get this information for all of them? We could have told them no, right? We could have told them no. So they didn't ask. So I don't care if you think that every other vendor out there should know the answer to the question that you have. If you don't know it, ask. Okay. Somebody once told me that the only stupid question is the one that you don't ask. And I think that that's true. Because if it's something that you don't know, then you need to ask the question, right? Get clarification. It certainly doesn't hurt. Okay, and it can potentially clear up a very simple issue. And the other reason I want you to ask questions is because a lot of times when we get questions from vendors, you see things in the scopes of work, in the solicitations that we might not, right? Because when we write these things, we review them over and over and over again. Okay, I know some of you are saying, really? We do, right? We do review them. But, you know, after a while, when you read things enough times, you start seeing the things that you think should be there rather than what actually is. And so sometimes when vendors ask questions, it prompts us to do an amendment and change the solicitation, okay? Because we didn't write something clearly enough, or because we need to strike something from the scope of work that we no longer require, or we need to add something to the scope of work that we didn't account for. So ask your question, okay? So that way we can do an amendment and, you know, fix the solicitation. And don't wait till the last minute. Okay, this is really, really important. Do not wait till the last minute. Okay, so since state purchasing solicitations are done online, okay, and remember I said that if you want to respond to a solicitation and you are not registered in state purchasing system, you're going to have to register in order to submit a bid or a proposal. Don't wait to the last minute to register. Okay, we want you to get completely through the registration process. And, you know, that's not necessarily going to happen at the last minute, right? Our bids are due at 2 p.m. when they're due. Don't wait until noon or 1:30 to try and start doing everything at once, because it's going to take you some time. And then our electronic system, once that deadline hits, it cuts you off. You can't upload anything. And if your bid or your proposal is not complete, then you're non-responsive and we don't look at your proposal. It has to be complete, it has to be uploaded, and that's your responsibility, okay? And then when we are accepting hard copy bids or proposals, if we say 2 o'clock and you show up in our office at 2:01, we wouldn't accept it, okay? And then a lot of other state agencies and local public bodies, it's the same way. If we have a deadline, we have to adhere to that deadline, right? If it's 2 o'clock, 2:01, 2:05, 2:15, those are not, we're not going to accept your bid or your proposal, okay? We can't, because it's not fair to the vendors who met the deadline. And then make sure you're sending your submissions to the right place. Now with state purchasing, that's not really an issue nowadays, because we're doing the electronic, and that's the only place that you can upload it electronically to submit it to state purchasing. But when we were accepting hard copies, occasionally a vendor would, instead of sending their bid or proposal to our office as was required in the document, they would send it to the agency. Okay, and so, you know, when you're dealing with other state agencies or local public bodies, make sure that you are submitting your document to the right place, okay? Because sometimes it can get overlooked. And, you know, even local public bodies, some of the larger ones, there are so many divisions within state agencies. Some of the larger departments in local public bodies are the same way, that they might not know who the solicitation goes to, right? Who your submission goes to. So make sure that you're sending it to the right place. And then there's a lot of organizations out there for you for support, okay? There's PTAC, the Procurement Technical Assistance Center. There's the American Indian PTAC. There's the SBDC, Small Business Development Center. There's the MBDA that you just met, Gabriela, right? There's the Albuquerque Hispano Chamber. There's the American Indian Chamber. Reach out, right? with plenty of time, as soon as possible, because these organizations are not going to help you write your responses or help you with the procurement, but what they can do is they can advise you. Okay, and so make sure, but you have to do it ahead of time, right? You can't just contact them on the day that that your bid is due and say, hey, can you look this over? Because they may have clients. So make sure that you reach out to them as soon as possible. Okay, and they can provide you with assistance, and if nothing else, they can call us and ask for guidance as well. I mean, if it's our solicitation, we may be limited in what we can tell them, but and we don't want them to disclose any details of your bid or proposal, but ask for help as soon as possible. Okay, and so I'm just going to close this out and say thank you very much for your interest in doing business with the state of New Mexico. We do appreciate it. We do want, you know, everybody, we do want to give people the opportunity to respond to procurements. And, you know, because we really do want, it is better for the state for us to have as much competition as possible. And so, you know, please don't make the mistakes that, you know, I've kind of gone over here, because we really want to have successful procurements, and, you know, we want to be able to evaluate the submissions without having to disqualify anybody. Okay. So that is enough for me. That's it for me. And I truly thank you for your time today. It has been my pleasure to present to you. So, Joanna, what do we do now?
Sure. Thank you so much, Susan. That was fantastic. That was plenty of information for folks to get started. So thank you so much. If it's up to you if you want to go ahead and turn your camera back on.
Oh, sure.
And if folks have any questions, please put those in the questions box. This is your chance to connect directly with Susan. And I think Gabriela is still on too. I do see a question for Gabriela if you're still on. And let me go through these. Okay, so Susan, you have a few questions. One of them,
Okay.
and of course, some of these are repetitive, but
Sure.
we've learned that that's a great way to get the information out. So
Right.
Dan did ask, how do we attain a resident certificate?
So the best way to do that is go to using the links that I provided in the materials, or to go to the state purchasing website, is to go to the tax and rev page and download the application. Okay, so you can see all of the information that's required, but it's located on Tax and Rev's website, and you can get there from the state purchase from the link that I provided to you in the materials, and then I know that Joanna's going to be sending that out or posting that. So it is available online, the application.
Okay, thank you so much. And Gabriella, I'm going to throw this question out to you that Jennifer asked. She is referencing the threshold for the revenue that you had mentioned, that you guys have that parameter of working with businesses. Is there any consideration made, since many small businesses were hit hard last year due to COVID, that is there any wiggle room that they could work with you if they're not hitting that revenue threshold you mentioned?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Definitely. The beauty of it is the Department of Commerce has been a little bit flexible in the requirement, meaning they didn't necessarily say the most recent year, right? So perhaps if in 2019 it was over $500,000 and in 2020 because of COVID, that's fine as well. Or if it's really close to that, we're happy to work with any businesses to support with their growth. So feel free to give me a call or just reach us through the website and we will work with you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that answer. And let's see, so we have a question for you, Susan. If using federal funding, does this mean that the FARS needs to be followed?
It depends, okay? It depends because the FAR, as it's called, the it really depends on the funding, because there's some federal funding that simply says follow state procurement, okay? But there's other federal funding that has very specific requirements attached to it. So it's not a, I can't give a blanket answer for that. It really depends on the funding that the agency is receiving and the requirements attached to it.
Okay, great, thank you. Jennifer is asking, for RFPs, are they chosen by the lowest price? Technically, okay.
No,
Okay.
that's no, because the way that cost works in an RFP is we assign, a lot of RFPs have a formula that they use for cost. So what they do is they take the lowest cost and they divide it by each cost to come up with a percentage, and then they apply that percentage to the amount of points that have been allocated to the cost. And so cost is only a portion of the RFP, not, it's not like an ITB where it goes to the lowest cost.
Okay, great, thank you. Fiona is asking, how do we get listed on the statewide pricing agreement?
Okay, so as I explained before, you have to win an award to be on a statewide price agreement. Okay, you have to respond to an ITB or an RFP in order to be put on a statewide price agreement. There is an exception to that that I'll cover here in a second. But other than that, like I said, if you register with state purchasing, we don't automatically put someone on a statewide price agreement. Now, the only caveat to that is we are also allowed by law to put statewide price agreements in place that are based on federal GSAs or based on approved cooperatives. Okay, and so the example I'll use is tires. So we do cooperatives with an organization called NASPO, the National Association of State Procurement Officers. And officers or officials, I always forget that. Anyway, NASPO. And we do procurements with them. Okay, we work with them, and they had, I think they currently have, or we had, a statewide price agreement for tires, but the contract was with the manufacturers. So with Goodyear, with BF Goodrich, Michelin, okay, the manufacturers. When that happens, the manufacturers can identify to us authorized distributors in the state of New Mexico. Okay, so if you are an authorized distributor for a manufacturer that we have on a statewide price agreement, you may be able to ask them to be put on their authorized distributor list, in which case we will add that to the statewide price agreement. But again, we don't just add people to statewide price agreements. There has to be a method for that.
Okay, thank you. And one more question, because I want to be conscious of people's time. This is from Charlotte. Is there a business size threshold to register to do business with the state of New Mexico?
No, there's not. And so when registering with state purchasing to do business with the state, really, as long as you can meet our requirements and respond appropriately, like with ITBs, as long as you meet all the requirements in the scope of work or the specifications that we have, and provide us the low cost, then we can purchase from you. Okay, there's no threshold. Now, again, you have to make sure you're reading the solicitation, make sure that you can meet the delivery requirements if we stated any, make sure there's, you have all the appropriate certifications or licenses that are required. But if you can meet those requirements, we can purchase from you, we can do business with you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And my kids just ran in, so this is perfect timing to to end. But thank you so much, Susan, for your time and for this information. Really excited, and hopefully this is helpful to people. And thank you so much for Gabriela and the information about your center and all you all are doing to help people to get contracts with the state and federally. So again, thank you. And I want to thank everybody who has tuned in today. And we will be sending this information out later on this week. So look for that in your email. And if there is any way that we can help at economic development, please don't hesitate to reach out. So thank you again, Susan. Thanks, Gabriela.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Okay, everyone take care.
You too. Bye.